some ways, even outshines acts that we would normally consider to be at the very pinnacle of sacrifice and devotion. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because it is not a small claim. We are talking about a period of time so short that most of us don't even take 10 days off work in a year. And yet Allah has elevated it above almost everything else. Why? What is it about these 10 days, the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, that makes them so extraordinarily significant? This is what I want us to explore together today. Because once we understand the why behind this, our entire approach to these days will change forever. Let's start with the words themselves, because sometimes we hear things so often that we stop truly listening to them. The Prophet ﷺ said that there are no days in which righteous deeds are more beloved to Allah than these 10 days. Think about the phrasing here. Not very beloved, not quite beloved. He said there are no days more beloved than these. That is a superlative statement, an absolute statement, a statement that places these 10 days at the very top of the entire calendar. Above Ramadan, even in this specific sense, above every other stretch of time we experience throughout the year. And then, as if to make sure nobody misunderstood the magnitude of what he was saying, one of his companions asked him, "Not even fighting in the path of Allah?" And imagine that question, my brothers and sisters. Because in the eyes of the early Muslims, striving in the path of Allah, putting your life on the line, leaving your home, your family, your comfort to defend the truth and stand for justice, this was considered among the highest of all deeds. This was the pinnacle. This was what every sincere believer aspired to if the opportunity arose. So when the companion asked this question, he was essentially saying, surely nothing beats that. Surely nothing is more beloved than a person who literally gives up everything, including their own safety for the sake of Allah. And the Prophet ﷺ replied, not even that, except for a man who went out with his life and his wealth and came back with neither. Meaning, unless a person gives the ultimate sacrifice, unless they go out fighting for the sake of Allah and lose their wealth and their very life in that cause, becoming a martyr, then nothing else compares to what can be earned in these 10 days. Everything else, every other deed, every other act of devotion throughout the rest of the year, falls short in comparison to what these 10 days offer, except for that one specific, extreme case of complete and total sacrifice. Now, why does this matter so much to us today? Because it tells us something profound about how Allah measures worship. It is not always about the size of the deed. It is not always about how dramatic or how difficult or how visible an act of worship is. Sometimes it is about timing. Sometimes it is about the container in which the deed is placed. The very same deed, performed at a different time, might carry a fraction of the reward it carries when performed within these blessed 10 days. This should completely reshape the way we think about worship, about effort, about where we choose to invest our energy throughout the year. Think about it like this. Imagine you had the opportunity to invest your money, and someone told you that for 10 specific days out of the entire year, every single dollar you invested would return to you multiplied many times over, far beyond what you would receive on any other day. Wouldn't you clear your schedule? Wouldn't you gather every resource you had? Wouldn't you make sure you didn't miss even a single one of those 10 days? You would plan for it. You would prepare for it. You would talk about it with everyone you know, encouraging them not to miss out either. This is exactly the situation we find ourselves in with these 10 days, except the currency here is not money. It is something far more valuable. It is our good deeds, our worship, our connection to our Creator, and ultimately our eternal reward. And yet, how many of us actually treat these 10 days with that kind of urgency? How many of us plan for them the way we would plan for a limited time financial opportunity? This is something we need to reflect on honestly, without judgment, but with a sincere desire to change. Let's think about why Allah might have chosen to make these particular 10 days so special. Because Allah does not do anything without wisdom, and when He elevates a period of time above all others, there is always a reason, a lesson, something for us to understand and benefit from. One of the beautiful things about these 10 days is that they gather together in one condensed period, so many different forms of worship that are usually spread out and separated throughout the rest of the year. Think about it. Within these 10 days you have fasting, one of the most beloved acts of worship to Allah. You have prayer, the daily connection that every believer maintains with their Lord. You have charity, the act of giving that purifies wealth and softens the heart. You have the remembrance of Allah, the dhikr that keeps our tongues moist and our hearts alive. You have the Hajj itself, for those who are able to perform it, which combines physical exertion, financial sacrifice, patience, and complete submission all in one journey. And you have the sacrifice, the Qurbani, which commemorates one of the greatest tests of faith in human history. All of these acts of worship, which throughout the rest of the year might be scattered across different months, different occasions, different circumstances, are gathered together within this single window of 10 days. It is almost as if Allah has compressed an entire year's worth of worship opportunities into this brief period, giving us a concentrated dose of everything that matters most in our relationship with Him. And this is precisely why the reward is so magnified. When you combine multiple forms of worship into a single period, and that period is elevated by divine decree to the most beloved time of the year, the resulting reward becomes something almost impossible to calculate, something that reminds us just how generous and merciful our Creator truly is. I want you to reflect on this idea of concentration for a moment, because I think it holds a lesson far beyond just these 10 days. In our lives, we often assume that more time automatically means more opportunity, that spreading things out is always better than compressing them. But sometimes the opposite is true. Sometimes a short, focused, intense period of effort produces results that months or even years of scattered, half-hearted effort never could. Think about how athletes train intensely for a short competition season. Think about how students focus intensely during exam periods. Think about how businesses focus intensely during a launch window. There is something powerful about concentrated effort within a defined period of time. And Allah, in His infinite wisdom, has built this same principle into our spiritual lives through these 10 days. This should give us hope, my brothers and sisters. Because for those of us who feel like we have not done enough throughout the year, for those of us who feel like our worship has been inconsistent, who feel like we have let opportunities slip by, who feel weighed down by our shortcomings, these 10 days offer something extraordinary. They offer a chance to make up for lost time in a way that is disproportionate to the actual time invested. 10 days can outweigh months, sometimes years, of ordinary worship. This is not because Allah is arbitrary, but because He is generous beyond measure. And He has designed this period specifically to give His servants a chance to catch up, to reset, to earn immense reward, even if the rest of their year has not been what they hoped it would be. Now let's think practically about what this means for us as we approach these days each year. If we truly internalize the fact that these are the most beloved days to Allah, days that outweigh even the sacrifice of a fighter in the path of Allah, except for the ultimate sacrifice of a martyr, then how can we possibly let them pass by unnoticed? How can we treat them like any other 10 days on the calendar, going about our regular routines, our regular distractions, our regular level of spiritual engagement, when Allah Himself has told us that this period deserves something more, something elevated, something intentional? I think about how much effort we put into preparing for things that matter to us in this worldly life. We prepare for job interviews, we prepare for exams, we prepare for weddings, for trips, for important meetings. We research, we plan, we set reminders, we clear our schedules. We make sure nothing gets in the way of what we consider important. And yet, how much preparation do we put into these 10 days? Days that the Prophet ﷺ told us are more beloved to Allah than almost anything else we could do throughout the entire year. This disconnect between what we claim to believe and how we actually behave is something we need to confront honestly. I want to also address something that might be lingering in some of your minds right now, which is the question of why physical striving? Why fighting in the path of Allah? is used as the comparison point in this hadith. Why not compare these 10 days to fasting the entire month of Ramadan, or to performing Umrah, or to some other significant act of worship? I believe there is wisdom in choosing this particular comparison, because striving in the path of Allah represents the height of sacrifice, commitment and risk. It represents a person putting everything on the line, their comfort, their safety, their very life, for the sake of something greater than themselves. By comparing these 10 days to that level of sacrifice, and then saying that ordinary deeds performed within these 10 days are equal to or greater than that sacrifice, Allah is telling us something remarkable about the value of consistency and sincerity over sheer intensity or drama. You do not need to go to war. You do not need to risk your life. You simply need to engage sincerely, consistently, and wholeheartedly with the acts of worship available to you during these 10 days. And the reward you receive can rival even the greatest sacrifices a person could make. This is an incredible mercy, and it should fill our hearts with gratitude rather than despair. Because let's be honest, my brothers and sisters, most of us will never be called to fight in the path of Allah in the way that early Muslims were. Most of us will never face that kind of test, that kind of extreme circumstance. And so for a long time it might have felt like the highest levels of reward were simply out of reach for ordinary people living ordinary lives. But this hadith flips that entirely. It tells us that within these 10 days, ordinary people living ordinary lives, engaging in ordinary acts of worship done sincerely and consistently, can reach levels of reward that rival the greatest sacrifices imaginable. This is not a small thing. This is a profound statement about accessibility, about mercy, about the fact that Allah has made the path to immense reward available to every single one of us, regardless of our circumstances. Let's think about who benefits from this. The person working a regular job, coming home tired every evening, still has access to these 10 days and the immense reward they carry. The parent juggling the responsibilities of raising children, managing a household, still has access to these 10 days. The student buried in coursework and exams, the elderly person with limited physical capacity, the person struggling with health issues, the person facing financial hardship, every single one of these individuals has equal access to the reward available within these 10 days. It does not require wealth. It does not require physical strength beyond what a person already has. It does not require special circumstances or privileged access. It simply requires sincerity, intention, and a willingness to engage. This is why I always encourage people to see these 10 days not as a burden, not as an obligation weighing them down, but as an open door. An invitation extended by their Creator, a gift wrapped and waiting to be unwrapped. Allah is essentially saying to us, here is a period where I've made it easier for you to earn immense reward. Here is a period where your small deeds carry disproportionate weight. Here is a period designed specifically so that you do not have to wait for some dramatic, life-altering circumstance to prove your devotion. You can prove it right here, right now, within these 10 short days, through the ordinary rhythms of prayer, remembrance, charity, and sincerity. I also want us to reflect on the psychological and spiritual impact of knowing that a specific period carries such elevated status. There is something about deadlines, about limited windows of opportunity, that awakens a sense of urgency within us that ongoing, open-ended opportunities often fail to produce. Think about how much more focused we become when we know a sale ends in a few hours, compared to a sale that runs indefinitely. Think about how much more we accomplish in the final days before a deadline, compared to when we have unlimited time. Allah in His wisdom has built this same psychological principle into our spiritual calendar. By giving us a defined, limited window of 10 days, He is awakening within us a sense of urgency that pushes us to actually engage, rather than perpetually postponing our worship to some vague future moment that may never come. This is something I want every single one of us to internalize deeply. Because how many of us live our spiritual lives with the intention of improving someday, of becoming more consistent someday, of increasing our worship someday without ever actually specifying when that someday will arrive? These 10 days force us to confront that vagueness. They say the time is now. Not next month, not next year, not when things settle down, not when life becomes less busy. The time is now, within these 10 specific days. Because this is when the reward is at its peak. This is when Allah's mercy is most abundant. This is when the doors of opportunity are flung wide open, in a way that will not remain open indefinitely. I want to bring this back to something practical and heartfelt.